wondering then, sort of believing in maybe in the objective way, the stories rather than seeing them as myths and understanding the story, is how that's different from the negative side of an ideology, which can be extremely dangerous. So taking that story.
Excellent question. Well, that's partly what we're going to talk about a lot. It's the difference between, it's like the difference between surfing and being in a styrofoam bubble on a lake. You know, there's a dynamic element. So if I say, well, if you're going to identify with the process of transformation, first of all, I'm not saying that's all you should identify with. That's a different question. It might depend on where you are and what you're doing and at what stage of life you are and all sorts of other things. But to the degree that you identify with the process that transforms belief systems, you're not an ideologue. It's as simple as that, because an ideologue is a totalitarian. They say, well, here's the bloody axioms, here's the system it generates, we're done. So you're not done, and you've left things out. Now that doesn't mean you don't need structure to move forward, right? So it's a tricky thing. But you can say, that's why I'm trying to communicate to you the idea that it's better to conceptualize a belief system as a set of tools. They don't have to be perfect. You know, you can fix a pipe with a pretty lousy wrench. So you've got tools at your disposal and you shouldn't abandon them. I mean, thank God for the tools, you know. But if you can think up a better tool, it's more power to you. So, I mean, I've had fundamentalist Christians in my classes before, you know, and it rattles them up pretty hard, because they're kind of funny. They're sort of like the rational atheists. They tend to think of the religious system as a theory about objective reality. It's so funny because they both share that, they both share the same presupposition. And so, you know, I outline evidence that it's not, and that often is extraordinarily hard on their fundamentalist viewpoint. So, but that's okay with me. It's like, oh, definitely not. Like, I mean, all of you people in this class are unconscious advocates of ancient religious ideas. Like, I don't care whether you know it or not. It's like, because otherwise you run into Dostoevsky's conundrum. If there's no absolute morality, he really meant if there's no God, then you can do anything you want. Everything's up for grabs. And so the question is, do you run around doing anything you want? Or you can say, well, you don't because you're afraid. It's like, fine, you can take that avenue, I don't care. That just puts it outside of the context of this argument altogether. Why do you act morally? Why should you? Why shouldn't you lie to get what you want? Or why should, or should you? Why shouldn't you steal to get what you want, or kill to get what you want? Why not? There's got to be answers to these questions. Obviously, every 3-year-old knows that if you lie carefully, you can get what you want. So why not do it? All the time. Why not practice it until you're great at it?
I think it's interesting too that people that do lie all the time, like compulsive liars, are so like repulsive to other people. Like it's almost like I find that interesting that like people that do that are like other people see it as like really wrong.
So I've got a story for you. So if you got a bunch of chimps in a cage, and you bring a snake in there, even a plastic snake, they'll all hit the ceiling, get away from that snake. But then they'll all look at it, and look at it, and look at it. And if a chimp comes across a big snake in the wild, they have a particular call they use, which the primatologists call a snake rah, which is W-R-A-A-H. So it's sort of like the sound the chimps make. So they make this noise, and then all the other chimps will come, and they'll just look at that snake. Like they stay a fair distance from it, but they'll look at it and look at it and look at it and look at it for hours and hours and hours. It's like Dexter. Right? Right. The serial killer, contemptible object and ever eternally fascinating. It's the same sort of thing. You know, and so there's disgust and attraction at the same time. So that's a good question. So alexithymia is a hypothetical psychiatric condition that consists of the inability to articulate emotional states. It's a good question because It depends on the degree to which your personality has to be articulated in order to be functional. And one of the things I would propose to you, and this is partly why we're doing the exercises that we're doing, is that just like, imagine that if your joints weren't articulated, it's not very helpful because you could just sort of slap things with your hands, you know, they'd be like paws, but they're fully articulated. And there's a conceptual relationship between articulated speech and articulation. Articulated speech means that your tools for dealing with the world are more differentiated, perceiving, acting in the world. And so the more you can articulate yourself, the more of you there is, the more the world there is, and hypothetically that's a good thing. So if you're without terms for emotions, pretty damn hard to communicate.